I feel strange. Something's wrong.
What is it? Tell me what's happening.
I think I need to go.
Okay, we'll go now. Let's go.
We were finally picking a name for our first child. My wife smiled and said the name Leo. It was perfect, until I remembered where I had heard it before. Isn't it your ex's name? I asked. The smile vanished from her face, and the silence that followed told me our perfect life was built on a secret I wasn't supposed to find. The nursery was filled with the sweet smell of fresh yellow paint. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the sun streamed to the large window, lighting up the soft rug on the floor. I stood on a small ladder, carefully painting the final corner of the room. My wife, Sarah, sat in a rocking chair nearby. She was 7 months pregnant, and she looked beautiful in the soft light. She was rubbing her belly and smiling at the tiny wooden crib we had built together the weekend before. Everything felt perfect. We had spent years dreaming about this moment. We had worked hard to buy this house and create a stable life. Now, the only thing left to do was wait for our son to arrive. We were in a bubble of pure joy. No stress from work or the outside world could touch us here. This room was a sanctuary for our new family. Sarah picked up a book of baby names that was resting on her lap. She had marked many pages with small blue sticky notes. We had gone back and forth for weeks, laughing at names that sounded too old or too strange. It was our favorite game. I think I found the one, she said softly. Her voice was full of emotion. She looked down at her belly and then back at me. What do you think of the name Thomas? I climbed down from the ladder and wiped my hands on a cloth. I walked over to her and put my hand on her shoulder. Thomas is a strong name, I whispered. It sounds classic and kind. I was thinking of something else, though, she continued. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window. I was thinking about the name Leo. It just feels right. It feels like him. The joy in my chest suddenly turned into a sharp, cold knot. The name Leo did not sound like a stranger to me. It sounded like a ghost from a past I thought we had buried. The air in the sunny nursery suddenly felt thin. I looked at Sarah, hoping I had heard her wrong, but she was still smiling, her fingers tracing the edge of the baby name book. She looked so peaceful, yet the name she had just spoken was like a physical blow to my chest. Leo, I asked. My voice sounded flat and strange in the quiet room. Sarah nodded and leaned back in the rocking chair. Yes, I woke up thinking about it today. It feels strong but sweet. Don't you think it fits him? I stepped away from the ladder and put the paintbrush down on a piece of plastic. I tried to keep my heart from racing, but memories were already flooding back. I remembered our first year of dating. I remembered a late night when she had a bit too much to drink and cried about a man from her college days. His name was Leo. He was the one who broke her heart. He was the one she could never quite forget until I came along. Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Leo, isn't that your ex's name? The smile did not just fade from her face. It vanished instantly. Her posture went stiff, and she pulled her hand away from her belly. The soft light in the room suddenly felt harsh and cold. She looked down at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. That was a long time ago, she whispered. Her voice was defensive now. It is just a name. I like the sound of it. Why does it have to be about him? Because it is him, I replied. I felt a surge of heat in my face. Out of 1,000 names in that book, you picked the one man you told me you loved before me. You want to call our son by his name? You are making this into something it isn't, she snapped. She stood up from the chair, moving slowly because of the weight of the baby. I thought we were happy. I thought we were past all that old drama. She walked toward the door without looking back. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving me alone in the half-painted room. The yellow walls that looked so bright a moment ago now felt like a cage. I stood there with the smell of wet paint in my nose, wondering if the woman I loved was carrying a secret I was never meant to find. The days that followed were quiet and heavy. We moved around the house like strangers sharing a hotel suite. Sarah spent most of her time in the bedroom with the door closed, and I stayed in the living room, staring at the television without seeing anything. The nursery remained half-painted. The yellow walls seemed to mock me every time I walked past the open door. I could not stop my mind from racing. I kept thinking about the box of old photos I had seen in the back of her closet when we first moved in together. I remembered a blurry picture of a man with a wide smile and dark hair. Was that Leo? Was she still thinking about the life she could have had with him? Every time I looked at her growing belly, I felt a sharp pang of jealousy. It felt like a shadow was standing between us, and that shadow had a name. One night, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I knew I should stop, but I found myself searching through her old social media posts from years ago. I found a photo from her graduation day. There he was. He was tall and looked confident, with his arm draped around her shoulders. The caption said something about forever. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt like I was losing a race to a man who wasn't even there. When Sarah came into the kitchen to get a glass of water, she saw my face. She saw the screen and her eyes filled with tears. She didn't say a word. She just turned around and walked back to the bedroom. The silence was louder than any scream. I realized that by looking for the ghosts of her past, I was destroying our future. Trust was slipping through my fingers like sand, and I didn't know how to hold on. The silence finally broke on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was sitting at the kitchen table, picking at a dinner that had gone cold. Sarah walked in and stood by the sink, her back to me. She looked tired. Her shoulders slumped under the weight of the last few days. I could see her reflection in the dark window, and she looked like a shadow of the woman I married. I can't do this anymore, I said. My voice was cracked and weary. I feel like I am living with a memory instead of my wife. Every time I think of that name, I feel like I am second best. Sarah turned around slowly. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying in secret. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked broken. She walked over to the table and sat down across from me. She reached out as if to touch my hand, but then pulled back. It was never about him, she whispered. Her voice was so low I had to lean in to hear it. You think I want to name our son after a man who left me when I needed him most? You think I am that cruel? Then why, Sarah? I asked, why that specific name? She took a deep breath, and a sob escaped her throat. My grandfather's middle name was Leo. He was the only person who stayed by me when my parents divorced. He passed away the same year I met that guy in college. I was grieving, and when I met him, I thought it was a sign. I thought he was sent to fill the hole my grandfather left. She wiped a tear from her cheek with the back of her hand. The man was a mistake, but the name belonged to the man who raised me. I wanted our son to have his strength, not that ex-boyfriend's face. I was just too ashamed to tell you how much I still hurt from that time in my life. I didn't want you to think I was still sad about a ghost. The weight in my chest suddenly lifted, replaced by a wave of guilt. I had spent days building a monster in my head, imagining a betrayal that didn't exist. I had looked at old photos and social media posts, hunting for reasons to be hurt, while my wife was simply trying to honor a man she loved. I reached across the table and finally took her hand. It was warm and shaking. The tension that had filled our home for weeks finally began to melt away. I moved my chair closer to Sarah and pulled her into a hug. I felt her tears soak into my shirt as she finally let out all the breath she had been holding. I realized then that my jealousy had blinded me. I was so worried about a ghost from her past that I had stopped being a partner in her present. I am so sorry, I whispered into her hair. I should have asked you why the name mattered instead of assuming the worst. I let my own fear get in the way of our joy. Sarah pulled back and wiped her eyes. She gave me a small, tired smile. We both let it happen, she said. But I don't want that name anymore. It carries too much weight now. I want our son to have a name that starts with us. Something fresh and new. We went back into the nursery that evening. I picked up the paintbrush, and Sarah sat in her rocking chair. We spent hours really talking about our future. We decided on the name Oliver. It was a name that belonged only to our son. 2 months later, I held our baby boy in the hospital room. He was perfect, with tiny fingers and a quiet strength. As I looked at Sarah, I knew we had survived our first real test as parents. We had learned that honesty is the only way to keep the light inside our home. The shadows were gone, and the only thing that mattered was the beautiful life we were holding in our arms.